Hi everyone. It's nice to connect with you all. Just going to check to make sure everything's working. Well, great. I guess we'll get started. Whether you're watching this right now live or watching this later, a few days after, I just want to say hi to you all. It's always a pleasure to connect with you all, and I think these Ask Me Anything sessions every Sunday are such a good way to connect with everyone amidst a pandemic. So just a huge shout out to Kinga and David and everyone for organizing these. I think they're just fantastic. I've enjoyed the ones that have happened last month. I'm looking forward to the ones to come as well, and I'm just grateful to be here right now to be able to connect with some of you. Maybe we'll wait for a few more people to come on board and tune in, and then we can dive into some questions I received in advance, as well as if you have any questions to definitely comment them, and I'll do my best to try to answer them. Yeah, so we'll just wait for a few more people to come on maybe, and then we can get started. Well, maybe we can just continue, and if anyone wants to come on after, they can. David commented, I don't think anyone else is on, unless my I'm in the Pacific time zone, so hopefully everyone is able to make it. If not, that's okay. Just watch it afterwards. Okay, we're starting to get a few more people. That's all right. I get it. It's Sunday. Everyone's probably busy. Hopefully the weather is nicer. I know in Vancouver right now where I am, it's been pretty nice and sunny outside. Alrighty, well, we have a few people now. I think I'll just dive in and we can see where this goes. Yeah, and if anyone at any point wants to ask any questions, comment away, and I will be sure to do my best to answer your questions. Okay, I'll just go for it. There's a few of you on. So a little bit of an introduction about myself. I recently actually just graduated from a degree in mechanical and biomedical engineering at the University of Calgary, where I spent the last few years. I've always been deeply interested in the intersection between engineering, entrepreneurship, design thinking, and inclusion work, whether this is designing accessible devices or advocating for digital skills, learning opportunities for different individuals, especially minorities. And so in my undergraduate degree, I was actually able to do a year-long internship at Garmin Canada, where I designed fitness wearables and smartwatches, particularly the optical biosensors that you use to measure heart rate on smartwatches with their innovation team. I have also really enjoyed coaching and mentorship, so I've coached with Special Olympics Canada for individuals with disabilities, as well as mentoring through the Women in Science organization, WISE, which has chapters all across Canada. So that's definitely been a side passion. And I guess outside of school, I love to play basketball. It's kind of my sport, as well as speed skating. I do some yoga, and I love anything chocolate. I'm a huge chocolate fiend, to say the least. And I guess looking forward, I'll be headed to the University of Oxford for graduate studies in the fall. So I'm very excited for that to come. That's a little bit about me. Maybe I can start and dive into some of the questions I received in advance. And if anyone has any other questions that they want to comment, they can do so, and I'll try to answer them as best as possible. I don't see any just yet, so maybe I can address some of the ones I received in advance. So the first question I got was, can you tell us about your journey to becoming a Rhodes Scholar? So honestly, when I read this question, it still seems surreal, because a year ago I was starting to prepare my application to the Rhodes Scholarship, and now come full circle a year later, I'm now preparing to head to Oxford. I guess you don't go into thinking about the scholarship per se. So I mean, at the beginning of my undergrad, I was just excited to dive into what I was curious about, what I was deeply fascinated in, and the things that that made me tick. And so I didn't really think much about the scholarship, because I think you go into doing what you want to dive into. And I think in the later years of my university degree, that's when I really realized that I looked at the credentials that the Rhodes Trust was put out there about the scholarship, and I realized that I was able to put forth a competitive application. I saw these similarities between my own passions and lived experiences and the tenets of the scholarship. And I guess by seeing that, I thought that it'd be good. It'd be suitable for what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go next. And it's interesting. I look at there's a lot of similarities, I think, with people that are in the Shilluk Leader Network, and just what the Rhodes Scholarship looks out for is that they're looking for change makers. They're looking for individuals who want to go out there and really use what they're passionate about to make a lasting, positive difference for communities globally. And I also like to compare it to entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurs are oftentimes people who see the world differently. They're people who have a hunger to act and inflict change. And oftentimes, just like many of you, you have this hunger to see the world differently, to innovate, to design, to advocate in ways that are definitely very unique. And whether that's fighting the world's fight or, impacting communities locally, that's how I really got interested in wanting to put forth an application to the Rhodes Scholarship. And so I guess the three main things they look at is academic excellence, and that's kind of the first thing that they look at, as well as having a sense and a lens for internationalism and global leadership, and the last being service-mindedness. So very common things in terms of, similar to the Shilluk Leader Network, many of you already have all these amazing goals and aspirations. And it's interesting, I think, I recognize that now I'm sitting in this position, having this label of now being a Rhodes Scholar, but it's a true testament to all the communities that I've been a part of, and all of the individuals that have had a stake in my life and in my formative years. It's as much as everyone's accomplishment as it is mine. And at the end of the day, it's a mere label. that does provide some life-changing opportunities, but it's also the start of another chapter. And I hope to really make the most of it and help out as much as I can. So if anyone ever has questions, I'd be more than happy to help out and help someone also achieve similar things to what I've been able to do with all of your support. I think it's also, with any of these scholarships and whatnot, it's unfortunate, but you go in thinking that you won't get it because the odds are so slim. But I also saw it as a learning opportunity of, I could go in and learn a lot about just grad school applications. Going through that process is practice. At the end of the day, you have an opportunity to connect with Rhodes alumni as well as regional finalists, which definitely helps grow your network. So if anyone's even considering applying, definitely do so. It's a great way to get exposure and get practice with these types of applications. And you never know what can happen and what can come out of it. So that's that question on scholarship. I'd be willing to talk to you all about grad school applications. If any of you are in your last year and thinking about grad school applications, I put forth quite a few, and not to say I'm an expert, but hopefully I'll be able to help and provide some tips and pointers if you ever have any. So if you have questions about those, definitely ask them. We can maybe save that for the end. The second question I got was, do you have mentors? And how did you obtain and benefit from them? So this question about mentors, I guess, is one that I often get, and individuals often ask me, how do you go about getting a mentor? And how do you keep that mentor? And what if how do you make the most out of these mentorship opportunities? I thought about this a little bit, and I guess my first response is to diversify your mentors. Whether that's having academic and mentors that provide career guidance, or mentors that provide leadership, or just social, emotional life guidance. I think there's a huge benefit to having mentors for different aspects of your life. I haven't found one person that I connect with on all aspects, and I think oftentimes when talking to my peers, they really benefit from having an array of people that they can go to talk things through for different aspects, such as, like I mentioned, that career guidance, or if you want leadership help, if you're leading a team, or perhaps you just have life things that you want to talk about. Having different people that you can go to really helps you make the most out of this thing that we call mentoring. The second being, I think you often have to seek them out for yourself. Whether this is cold calling, I've definitely on LinkedIn stalked people that I find really interesting, that I really enjoy their work, and just shoot them a message. Or whether this is also part of organizations. Oftentimes there are many university groups and clubs that already have mentor databases that you can connect with, and they already have individuals that are interested in mentoring students, so that's a great way to connect. Or like I said, you can cold call. I think if you show a genuine interest in wanting to learn and wanting to grow and get better, mentors are often really, really looking forward to help out. Because not only does it provide them a sense of fulfillment, but they're able to learn and grow and learn about you as well, and oftentimes it benefits both parties. And I guess the third thing that I like to think about mentorship is any mentor-mentee relationship is any mentor-mentee, relationship is a relationship at the end of the day. So you have to take an active role to make that relationship work like you would with any friend. And I think the best mentor relationships that I've had have been bidirectional in that I'm able to give and receive information. I think sometimes as mentees, we go in thinking, oh my goodness, what do I have to give to this person who might be senior, more experienced, and has a more perspective on the world than myself. But it's also important to note that oftentimes these individuals really value your perspective as a youth, and sometimes that helps them grow in unrivaled ways as well. So it's bidirectional. Both parties need to nurture the relationship, and it's important that if a mentor relationship isn't working out, that you don't have to, keep that going. You can politely tell them that, this is not working out at this time. Sometimes it's just not the right time, and yeah, it's just a constant growing process of finding those individuals that you can have around you when you do find yourself in a position where you need to talk things through. I'd also like to, I guess, mention that I like to think that there's a difference between mentors and sponsors. So I think mentors are individuals that you can go to for more, if you want to talk things through, and more face-to-face, personal, and direct. Versus sponsors are people that will invest in you and champion you when you aren't in the room. So for example, if you are after a meeting, or if you're not in a meeting and there's a sponsor in there, they will vouch for you on your behalf because they wholeheartedly believe in your potential. And so having these individuals that sponsor you when you're not there and speak positively about you behind your back is very key, I think, in any, whether it be an internship or a work placement or a research group, or if you're going out into industry or looking to grad school, for example, reference letters. Sponsors are people who really want you to succeed. And it's important to have both mentors who you can, talk to and make those personal relationships, but also people who will vouch for you when you may not even know that there's an opportunity that lies ahead. It's always important to look out for those people, and then also to give back. And I think I've realized that it's also my duty now to also be a sponsor for other people and help other people grow and get the same opportunities that I was able to. So yeah, if there's any questions related to mentorship, please feel free to ask. I know it's sometimes a tricky thing because sometimes you just don't find people that you click with. And I've definitely found that as well, which is why, like I mentioned, sometimes I'm just on LinkedIn looking at people and kind of stalking them to see whether or not someone has had the same trajectory that I've had and will be able to offer guidance. And sometimes those work out, and sometimes, I'm left on red and no one, and I don't get a follow-up. That's okay. It's kind of part of the game of similar to applying to jobs, applying to get a mentor. I think there's beauty in the process, and it definitely does work out. I have fabulous mentors in my life. Mentors in the Shilluk Leader Network. Good question, David. So I would say when I started, some of the senior Shilluk leaders who were only a few years older, because I'm a 2015 leader, so 5 years ago, the network was a lot smaller than it is now. But definitely when I got into the Shilluk Leader Network, I definitely had Shilluk leaders who were older than me who kind of offered me guidance about navigating university, which really helped. And I think it's interesting because I'm still constantly, I don't want to say it's a full mentoring-mentee relationship, but I'm inspired by so many of my peers, and whether that's connecting on a power hour or meeting people at the SLX regional events in September, I'm constantly inspired, and I think of these peers as my mentors because I'm constantly learning. And for anyone, I guess, entering the Shilluk Leader Network now, which is many of you, it's exciting to see the network grow. Feel free to reach out. Feel free to ask any of us who are a bit more, who have gone through our degree, because we're willing to help. And I think that's a really awesome way for this network to grow and for it to be amazing, even more amazing than it already is to make more of these mentorship opportunities for everyone. So yeah, reach out. I know I'm willing to mentor anyone if they want to be want to get advice, and I'm sure I've peers that were in my class of Shilluk leaders. I think they're very open to as well. So don't hesitate. I've already had a few people DM me on LinkedIn, and we've had these amazing conversations. So feel free to reach out. Most people are often very willing to help out, even though it might seem kind of scary or it might seem odd reaching out. If you make your message personal and if you show that you want to learn and you want to grow and you're just there to get information, most of the time people are really willing to help out. I guess another large thing that we can talk about is extracurriculars and various co-curricular experiences. I got some questions about this privately a few weeks back, and also in advance of this AMA, just in terms of what I've been a part of, any advice that I have to any other Shilluk leaders that might be starting their university career, and any tips going in. Sometimes it can be quite daunting to, you've done your high school activities and now you're going into university. Will you do similar activities? How will you branch out? How will you make the most out of your university experience? It's a very overwhelming thing, I think, to go into university, and I'd be willing to speak about that a little bit. Maybe I can go into what I was a part of, and then maybe some just general tips for anyone who is looking to, I guess, wanting to see what's out there if you're starting out. So for me, I took advantage of a study abroad experience right after my first year ended. I spent 6.5 weeks in Germany, and I was able to take a course in international business as well as an introductory German course, which was quite fun. I lived with a homestay family, and it was really nice after my first year to spend that spring in Germany. I got to travel as well as just immerse in the culture, and we got to tour some automotive plants. So the engineer in me really, really found that a lot of fun. And then the following summer, I did a research internship for 2.5 months at Shanghai Jiaotong University in Shanghai, where I worked in the neural engineering laboratory, and that was fascinating. I have a specialization in biomedical engineering, so I was able to take some of the things that I had learned and apply them to very real-world issues, and the thing I focused on was fMRIs with stroke patients. So very interesting summer that I spent there as well. That was a bit more, I would say, research focused. The Germany experience was purely taking courses, and then in Shanghai I was very self-directed. I was part of a research group and worked on projects there. So those are that's been my international experience, and then I've also been able to join many competitions and conferences. In engineering, it's a pretty tight-knit community across Canada, so I've done the Canadian engineering competitions a few years in a row. So those, you apply regionally, you then qualify provincially, and then you make it to the national level. And I also did a engineering commerce competition. So those have kept me busy. I've done many other conferences in the engineering world. I've been heavily a part of the Engineering Student Society at the university, as well as other student government roles with the University Students Union, so very much heavy in the advocacy realm of student involvement. And like I mentioned before, mentoring individuals through WISE, coaching individuals. I'm trying to think. I guess a year and a half ago, I was part of an incubator for a startup idea that I had, which lasted about 6 months. That was while I was on my year of internship. And then this last year, my final year, a lot of my time was spent on the engineering capstone. So for anyone entering engineering, it's a summative project that you do in your last year. And my group designed a tremor stabilization device for individuals that have neurological movement disorders. So I don't know if you've seen the spoon that helps individuals with tremor eat, but we basically took that idea and we wanted to mechanically improve it and expand the range of utensils. So that definitely kept me busy in my last year and was a nice technical project to take on. That's been what I've been a part of. I guess just a short summary. And maybe I can go into tips for finding what will make the most out of your university experience if you haven't already. The first thing, to leverage the network that you already have. I've been asked often about, how do you find these opportunities abroad? How do you engage with individuals, or how do you engage and find these opportunities? So my kind of short answer to this is, see who's out in your network already. Whether you're working in a lab at your university, oftentimes these labs have partner labs across the world. So have an open conversation with your supervisor and ask them, do you have colleagues abroad that I could maybe work with for a summer? That's one way. A second is, tune into your university and the partnerships that they already have. Most universities in Canada have partner universities that they're connected with and that they run spring and summer trips with, or even semester in the fall or winter semester adventures with. I think in engineering it's a bit more difficult because it's an accredited program, but at the same time there are amazing things you can do in the spring and summer. And so I'd suggest reaching out to your university, your faculty. I know at my university they had an international studies office where they actually have a dedicated team to helping you find global opportunities that you can be a part of. I know because of COVID-19, I imagine that these might be impacted, but fingers crossed some of them might still continue, and just keep your eyes open for those specific partnerships that they have. And another practical tip, I guess less so on the study abroad and research side of things, is for conferences and competitions, if you're ever interested, say you're doing research in a very niche field or you want to compete in an area you feel like you have technical skills that you want to put to good use, I would suggest following those conference or competition organizing committees on social media. By following them on social media, you'll be able to know what you need to qualify, what needs to be in your application to a conference or a competition, and any important deadlines. And it's oftentimes a great way to connect with the organizing committee directly and just stay on top of the game in terms of just being connected to their social media. And sometimes you can actually get ahead of the game and be proactive in that regard to apply to some of those opportunities. And then the last, I guess, point I have is don't feel the need to force some of these experiences. Sometimes you can go into university thinking, I need to get my study abroad checked off, I need to get a research thing checked off, and fall into this kind of, formula of, you feel like you have to tick off these boxes. And I think some of the most powerful experiences that I've been able to have been the ones that have serendipitously come up, when the timing is right and when you don't even know the opportunities that lie ahead. Those have been some of the most amazing opportunities. So don't feel the need to have everything planned out. Some things just arise, do what you're passionate about, do what you enjoy, and dive into that, and be curious and continuously ask questions, and you'll be amazed with some of the opportunities that might arise. And I think this network is a fantastic place to start with that, because you can lean on peers in this network who have done some of those experiences that would be willing to vouch for you and connect you with some of those opportunities. Alrighty, I have a question here. This is exciting. Could you give a few examples of what neural engineering is? Does that involve analyzing data from MRIs, EEGs, etc., or building the physical tools to gather the data themselves? Great question, Advait. For me, what I did in neural engineering, it's a subset of biomedical engineering, and in fact, neural engineering actually, if you have a computer science background, data analytics, software engineering, it's a very interdisciplinary field. So I approached it from a biomedical engineering standpoint. I was focused on functional MRIs and imaging of the brain. So I conducted spatial alignment and smoothing of images that were taken of the brain, and used and coded in Python to be able to analyze any deviations in stroke patients, and to analyze different rehabilitation techniques to see the impact on blood flow in the brain, so the hemodynamic response in the brain. So essentially, even though I have a mechanical engineering background, I was doing a lot of just basic coding and basic image analysis, which you could do from any background. Neural engineering at large, yes, like you mentioned, it can be a whole variety of things: MRI, EEG, anything essentially to do with mapping and analyzing the brain. So yes, using physical tools to gather the data themselves is one aspect. I would say it is really focused on image analysis as well as, yes, you can also consider neural engineering potentially to be designing the tools to be able to image as well. That's another field. It's very broad and it's constantly changing, and there's many facets to look at the field. But what I did for that summer was purely functional MRI analysis. Yeah, great question on neural engineering. It was fascinating. I know I did that for the summer, but I didn't really continue it. I worked heavily with the research group. Definitely something I think I would love to pick up at some point. Whether that be courses that I take in grad school or beyond, just side projects. It's really interesting to see kind of the human brain, or the brain tech interface. Yeah, very, very cool stuff. Oh, I guess another really, it just came to me, another really cool aspect of that was the lab I was in was looking at meditation and mindfulness and how that changes, but like fundamentally changes the hemodynamic response in the brain and the way the blood flows in the brain, which I found was really fascinating. I'm really interested in mindfulness, um, and just being a part of a research group that actually went to Tibet and worked with some of the local monks to be able to, map their brains in comparison to a control group of individuals who didn't necessarily practice meditation or mindfulness on a daily basis and see the responses. There's some really compelling papers that were put out in terms of that. So I found that fascinating. I didn't get to work on it, but just being in that environment with other researchers working on that was really fabulous. A follow-up question to this that I got about extracurricular activities was, what kind of activities are there and how do they help you as a student? So I have, just based on my personal things that I was involved in, first being research, second being study abroad, third being conferences and competitions, and fourth being clubs and just clubs in general. I can go into what types of clubs there might be if you guys are interested, or I can kind of speak to these more broader categories and we can work with that. So research to me is really advancing a field of interest that you're interested in. You're gaining international credit and experience if this is research abroad, but you're building a repertoire of skills and expanding meaningful connections and hopefully advancing a scientific field, which is fascinating. Study abroad is really what you make of it. There's so many opportunities out there. You can enter very unique learning environments. It was the classrooms that I was in were incredibly international. So there's individuals from all across the world learning with me, which was very powerful. It's an opportunity to engage with local cultures, but at the end of the day, I think it's as academic as you want it to be. Oftentimes there's some really formal study abroad opportunities as well as informal ones where, they aren't really focused on academics as much, but offer you the opportunity to engage with local cultures. Study abroad to me is really a chance for you to have some liberty and make it what you want. And there's oftentimes, you're there for courses, but there's stuff that you can do to enrich your experience while there. Mine was only a 1 month spring opportunity, but I know there's individuals that go for a full semester as well. It's less common in engineering, but more so in sciences as well, which is fascinating stuff. And then third of four being conferences and competitions. These are opportunities to build meaningful career and professional skills, to be able to form connections with peers and industry and make yourself more marketable, and apply some of the technical skills you've learned in the classroom to real-world problems. And the fourth is clubs. So there's technical clubs and design teams that you can join that do technical work. There's student government clubs and involvement. I was part of a lot of that as part of the Diversity Inclusion Action Committee 1 year, where we looked at how to increase Indigenous and female representation in engineering, which is very much up my alley, which I found fascinating. And then there's faith-based clubs. There's clubs. You go into university and you'll be amazed if you haven't already with all the different club opportunities that you can be a part of. And it's a chance to really deviate from what your field might be and do something completely different. I think the University of Calgary had a drumming club, which was really cool to be a part of. So those are kind of the different extracurricular activities. We have another question. What dimensions do you use to compare or evaluate different opportunities and choose between them? Very good question. I think this touches on the ability to be able to manage your time and prioritize and rank different tasks, because at the end of the day, we all only have 24 hours in the day and we can only do so much. So yes, having a way to compare and evaluate is so key. I don't know if you've read, there's some great books out there. The titles escape my mind, but being able to weigh different tasks and see what will be most beneficial to you. Honestly, I don't even have a clear answer because I think I'm learning from it constantly. Every semester, every month seems to be different, and choosing what I want to prioritize. For me, I guess I don't really have a definite metric. I know some people have a really quantitative way of, mapping out their time and scheduling it. But for me, it's a bit too rigid, and I like to play at the lines, and I like to play where it's a bit unclear and where I can have those serendipitous encounters that might fuel something really interesting. But like you mentioned, I think there's certain semesters, if I look at large scale semester chunks, where I've been more focused on school and academics. And that has been where I invest the majority of my time. But there's also been other times where I look at projects and other activities and involvement outside of school that have been what I want to invest my time in. And then academics might take a backseat. So to me, it's a give and take every semester. You have to go in thinking that certain priorities might have to take a step back. Certain other priorities might actually move up a few steps. So in essence, like I said, I didn't really answer your question, but it's just a matter of, I think, being fluid and flexible and seeing what you may need right now and what tasks might be important right now might change in a month to come. Yes, and secondly, I guess in terms of the actual tasks themselves, I always look at what interests me first off, what fascinates me to the point where I want to do this. And even if I don't have the time to do it, I will try to find time and salvage whatever I can to do this because it just, it invigorates my soul and I want to do it so badly. So interest and that passion is one thing. Second being, does this actually serve the people around me? Is this doing some good? Is this actually making an impact that's beneficial and advantageous? That's the second thing I look at of, will people benefit from the work that I'm putting into this? And third, I think to have fun. I know it's cliche and whatnot, but what I found with university is you have to make the most of it. I finished my university, and some of the best experiences where I was fascinated by it, I was driving positive change and making a lasting impact, were the ones that I was having fun in. So do things that fill those three things and that make you feel fulfilled because you're doing what you love, you're making an impact, and you're just purely enjoying it. I think you can't go wrong if you focus on those three things. But it's so challenging. I think it varies for everyone on how they deal with, how they spend their time. How do you decide what to take on, what not to take on? And also, how do you say no to opportunities that might come up, might sound amazing and fascinating and very appealing, but it might not align with your core values and your core goals. And sometimes being able to say no to those things can be incredibly powerful, incredibly hard, but I've had to face those decisions. They aren't easy, but you learn a lot about yourself and your core values after you go through that. Alrighty, wow, we're already at 38 minutes. That time flew by. Some great questions. Maybe I can dive into maybe a few more questions that I had received in advance before this AMA. Maybe I can speak about mindfulness, actually. This is something that I wanted to speak about, just in general, to the Shilluk Leader Network. And what it might mean, and how you might want to do some readings on it, and how you might want to enter and incorporate it into your daily life. So for me, I guess a recap. Mindfulness, if you haven't heard it already, is, or at least for me, is allowing yourself to find the time to be introspective and reflect internally. You have to be disciplined to practice this every day, but it's a way, I think, especially as many of us are higher achievers, leaders, and innovators, and part of the reason is that we're the way we are is we have these standards that we set out. We have ambitious goals that we set, and we have this amazing and incredible drive to achieve. And it's great. I'm amazed with what everyone is always up to. Even during this pandemic, it's been absolutely inspiring. I personally also feel like I put a lot of pressure on myself to do these, to accomplish these goals, to achieve. And it's kind of this continuous cycle. And what I found that's helped me really stay centered and focused on my core values and be able to reflect on where I've come and the daily things that I'm achieving, and sometimes the successes and the failures, is being able to practice mindfulness and finding this space to connect with myself in this world of chaos. And for many people, this can take different forms. This can be, breathing exercises. It can be yoga. It can be meditation. It can be going out to exercise. It can be sitting alone journaling. It can be reading. It can be listening to music. It can be any of these self-care activities that you take on. I think it's so important to incorporate this every day. I definitely don't do it enough, but it's something that if I feel like by saying this I can help someone else, that would make me incredibly happy. Because yes, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and it's great to see that we're getting a mental wellness and well-being Shullick leader group going as well. So hats off to people who are invested in that. I think it's long overdue, and it's so well needed. Because at large, I think we suffer from some of these additional stresses that we impose on ourselves, and we have to practice and find a space for ourselves to not have judgment, to be able to grow and reflect and reflect internally. So that's kind of my little spiel on mindfulness. Take it for what you will. I personally think it's been incredibly fantastic for me to be able to stay disciplined, to be able to make it through the day, and be able to have energy to fuel my other passions. Awesome. Okay, so I know I've spoken a lot about individuals who might be entering university, what are clubs, what are different opportunities you can be a part of, study abroad, research opportunities. I've spoken a little bit about, mentorship and sponsorship. Maybe I'll speak about grad school applications a little bit for individuals that might be entering your final years. I put together quite a few grad school applications myself, so I have a few maybe tips and tricks and pieces of advice that might be able to help you. By no means am I an expert, but I was able to have a little bit of success with my applications, so I'd be willing to pass on some tips and advice. I know it's July, so I guess if you're looking at international opportunities, some of those have already opened up until I guess September, and then some of the more local Canadian opportunities will be probably between September and January. Those opportunities will be open then. But to get started, if you are like me and use the summers to kind of reflect and plan what's ahead for the next academic year, now would be an awesome time to start thinking about, if you are interested in a specific field, which programs are there out there that could really help you elevate and go to the next level. So first and foremost, similar to mindfulness, it's a time to be introspective. Grad school applications, you really have to dig deep and find what makes you tick. Because grad school, depending on the program, it can either be very broad or it can be very niche on a specific field that you're interested in. So it's important that you do the work internally to sit down, whether that's journaling, digging deep, sitting alone and thinking, or talking to those that know you the best. So best friends or mentors, those people that might be able to help share opportunities with you. And that's very important, step number one. When you're actually writing, I would say a personal statement. Maybe I'll cater this more to personal statements and writing those. I like to format my personal statement in kind of 3 tiers: past, present, and future. So looking at the past, what experiences have made you who you are? And then in the present, what are you doing currently to advance those interests and really build that repertoire? And then look at the future. What vision do you have, and where do you want to go? And how will this grad school program really help you get there? That's really important to kind of connect that chronologically and build that narrative. So how do you connect the dots that are in your life? And sometimes, there are certain dots that are outliers and certain dots that don't fit perfectly into this beautiful narrative. And that is completely okay. I think that's so common and needs to be accepted more. Talk about why there are outliers. This is so important, this outlier might be something that failed, or it might be an adversity that you overcame. I can't stress this enough, how important it is to talk about those experiences, because they make you human and they make you who you are. And application and selection committees really look at this and really see that you've learned from that and value that, as opposed to this beautiful shiny narrative where everything works out. Because I feel like that's very not very often the case for many people. Another big point, like I mentioned, your lived experiences, the person that you are, your identity, how does that fit into your interests? And I guess for all of you, your STEM interests. How do those experiences tie together? And what do you have to really contribute to the STEM community if that's what you're going to grad school for? And then the fourth is, I know I've had this a lot with some of my applications, was looking at describing the impact that you want to leave in the world. Whether this is in your research field, whether this is in the fields that you want to work in the future or serve in the future, what's the exact impact that you want to make? And then it's important to also differentiate how the program that you are applying to, how does this program act as a next logical step for you to achieve this? So really make that clear. Do your research like you would with any cover letter or any position you'd apply to. See how that institution that you're applying to is different, and see how you might align with that, and be sure to embed that into your personal statements. And then I guess my last point is break from formulas. I know I am very logical and I like to have everything kind of step by step written out, but it's also important to be creative. This might be the only time and the only opportunity in your application package, aside, transcript, CV oftentimes aren't very creative. So definitely use a space to show who you are, to talk about maybe some of the more abstract things about how you think about the world. What are your strengths? What are your fears? And the legacy that you want to leave? This space is for that. I think I sometimes fell into the boat of I need to technically describe my experiences and what I gained out of them, and kind of the more quantitative things, but at the same time, you have your CV and your resume that you often submit to these programs. That being said, disclaimer, I didn't apply to a niche research-based program. In those cases and in those institutions that value that, definitely follow that advice, that you might actually need to embed that into your personal statement, those technical experiences. So big disclaimer on that. Yeah. And then lastly, be authentic. It's weird to hear that, because you're like, aren't I a human? Aren't I authentic just inherently? But I think oftentimes you can read about, how do you write a personal statement, and you can fall into this bout of thinking that you have to act or write a type of way. And I think that's when I've fallen into those bouts, I've written very poor drafts of my personal statement. So just try to really stay authentic to who you are. Talk about adversity that you faced, failure that you faced, be genuine about it, and that will shine through. I can guarantee it. That's my kind of TLDR on personal statements or applications. I know actually there's been some amazing information shared by some Shilluk leaders in this network on graduate schools and preparing your application, so feel free to check those out. But if you have any questions, like I said, please let me know. I'd be willing to offer the little advice that I got through my experience of applying, and I'd be willing to share that with you if you so wish. We haven't had any new questions. Maybe I can, unless someone has one they want to ask, I can start to wrap this up. I know we've been on for now 50 minutes. So fearing the 1 hour little mark. Maybe we can do a bit of an open-ended question, less so technical, but I got a question about what my ideal career path would look like. So right now I'm sitting here, finished my engineering degree, going to do grad school in the fall, starting at Oxford. Like I said, I'm interested in engineering, entrepreneurship, tech development, just based on my past experiences. So it's interesting looking at my career path ahead. I think when I looked at this question, I was really quick to describe what my ideal work environment would be before I actually nailed down a particular name or title of a position that I want to hold in the future. Um, and I think that work environment that I want to have is some place where I'm challenged every day. You know, I want a dynamic environment. I want to be surrounded by talented, intelligent coworkers. I think being a part of this Shillick Leader Network is a bit of I was spoiled by it because I was surrounded by such amazing, intelligent people all the time, and I'm so incredible to have all of you. And I want that in a workplace as well. I want to be surrounded by people who will push me to be better. Um, and I think if I were to nail down technically what I want to do is I want to incorporate engineering principles with human factor design at the intersection of engineering advocacy, policymaking, and technology leadership. And another field I'm interested in is ethical technology development. So how do we make tech development applicable to all humans and to help ensure all individuals, regardless if you're a minority or not, ensuring everyone has a seat at the table as we head into an increasingly digitized society. So a lot of my work has been in advocating for people with disabilities in accessible design. That's been one big field that I'm interested in and that I hope to carry on into my research at grad school. That's kind of, I guess, encompassing of what I want to see in my workplace. And if I were to nail down, I guess, what a role might be, would probably be a product manager in a technology or engineering company that is customer facing. So I want to bring some of these interests into a leadership role like that. But we'll see. Very open to change, very flexible and adaptable, and I know that I will learn an incredible amount in grad school, and that might make me pivot, but I'm totally okay with that. That's what learning and that's what school is about. We haven't gotten any more questions. Okay, maybe I'll do one more question. I'll ask one more question, and then we can call it an evening. Or you can just tune out, and that's totally fine with me. I'll end off with this one. This is a good question. What do you see as Canada's biggest challenge or opportunity as it relates to your discipline? This is something that I personally feel very passionate about. I think we need more females and we need more diversity in leadership roles. For example, the boards of engineering and tech companies are nowhere near as reflective of the diversity of Canadian society as we live in. So that's something that I think is one of the biggest challenges. We need more minority individuals in these leadership positions that are able to inflict that change that trickles down through these organizations. And this kind of relates as well to we need more female founders and we need more support for female entrepreneurs. If you look at how much money is actually given by VCs, so venture capital firms, to female founders in comparison to how much is given to, for example, male counterparts, it's astounding. And it's kind of a big disparity. And that's something that I see definitely as a challenge. I think we need to change that dialogue and we need to change it because it's just flat out unfair and it doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. And then as well, it's interesting. I worked in a tech, right? I was in a design. I was at Garmin. I was designing wearables in a very much tech-driven company. And I got to learn a lot about the design thinking process through that. And what I realized is one of the most important things about design thinking is having empathy as step number one in your design thinking process. So being able to connect with your client, with your customer, with the community that you're serving as step one before you even jump to, assessing your constraints and, what you want your problem statement to be for what you're designing. First you really have to empathize, you really have to get to know your clients. And that's something that's so important and I think is oftentimes lost in development. But it's very key, and I think that's definitely a opportunity to be able to improve and make tech and make designs and make innovations that are more applicable and inclusive for all individuals. So that's one thing that I learned, and one thing that I see that there still is a gap out there. We're oftentimes quick to jump into solving a problem before understanding who the problem really impacts and what their needs are. And lastly, I guess a bit of a little spiel as well. I think with the pandemic, it's really showcased to us and to me particularly that we need science to inform politics. We need scientists that are working closely with policymakers to drive change. And I think Canada has been doing a good job. I think we could do better. But I'm really grateful for what we've been able to have leaders that really focus on science and embed that in policymaking. And I think if you look at, climate change, if you look at pandemics such as, COVID-19 virus, and if you look at digitization, we really need interdisciplinary teams of STEM-based people helping policymakers make decisions. I think that's something that I feel so very strongly about, and I think Canada should do what they're doing, but also not get complacent and continue to advocate for that. We got one question, another question. Hi, Katrina. What was the biggest hurdle you overcame during undergrad? That is an amazing question. I'm trying to think. Very good question. For me, one actually large hurdle at the start of my undergrad degree was moving away from home. So I grew up in Vancouver and I went to school in Calgary. And I honestly overlooked the social transition of high school to university. I think I was prepared well for the academics. I was prepared to, network with individuals, to seek out those opportunities. But what I wasn't prepared for was the social aspects of, leaving your support network that you've perhaps made in your home city, moving to a new city to go to school and having to, it's what it seemed like, create that network from scratch. It was fantastic having the Shilluk Leader Network, which was one amazing aspect of being able to establish myself. But at the same time, it was frightening and it was very overwhelming, worrying about whether I'd make friends and whether I'd be able to get a support system in place and how I would build that in addition to dealing with school and everything else at the start of university. So for me, that was a big hurdle because I think I was short-sighted and I didn't give it as much credit as it needed. And it was hard because I think if you live in the same city, as you go to school, you might not face that. So some of my friends who went to school in Vancouver as well might not have faced that. So it was difficult and very isolating. But I think the communities that I was able to take advantage of, for example, the Shilluk Leader community, as well as living in residence, those are fantastic ways for me to make those initial friends that helped me blossom and helped me build a support network. But it was definitely a hurdle, and it was very tough and challenging. And I'd be lying if I said it wasn't something that really left me feeling, low when I first started, because I was very nervous and I was very scared that I wasn't going to be able to make those friends in university, even though everyone around me seemed like was making all these friends. So that was definitely a big hurdle, but I can confidently say that after 5 years, I made fantastic friends. And if you're patient about it, you can't just jump the gun and think you're going to make all your friends in your first few weeks of university. Some of the best friendships kind of arose naturally in areas that we shared similar interests in. And you have to be patient, I think, with anything. And you have to have faith that there are people out there that you'll connect with. And if not, you have this amazing network of people you can just message that are also Shilluk leaders and that you can talk to, because it's a fantastic group of people. And I think some of my close friends came from other Shilluk leaders at my university. Yeah, Nova Scotia to York. I'm sure you probably felt that. Yeah, it can be hard. It's very hard. That that was my hurdle. Okay, maybe I'll wait for if anyone has another question that they want to um, ask away about anything. It can literally be about anything. Um, I'd be more than happy to chat. And if not, like I said, I'm always open to, if you want to message me, if you want to DM me on LinkedIn, any type of social media, I'd be more than happy to help out. My schedule is surprisingly pretty flexible right now, so I have all the time to help everyone out. And if I can't answer the question, I'd be willing to help you connect you with a friend who I'm sure will be able to help out. That's the power of the community and the network is everyone's really willing to help everyone out. Katrina also asks, how are you feeling about online classes in the fall? Yeah, good question. So this has kind of been an area where every day I refresh the page, the Oxford page, to see if they've come out with any new information. As of now, they said some lectures will be online. Some will, they have this tutorial system, so you're able to connect face-to-face in small seminar groups. And so those will still be happening, but some of the big lectures will be moving online. Personally, I don't know, I'm kind of split in my feelings about it. I recognize that, it's a safe and conscious thing to do is we need to do this. Otherwise, we'll see incredible spikes, especially potentially with a second wave. But at the same time, I'm also, I guess, a bit selfish because I like to be with friends. I like to be in the power with other people, with your classmates. It can be very hard, especially if you're entering into a new program for the first time, meeting people on an online platform. I think it's going to be challenging, but I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that I'll still be able to connect with people, even if it's virtually. Although I think path A for me would definitely still be in-person classes, even though I know that probably won't be the case. I'll still hang on to the thought that that might happen. But yeah. So I think I'll still be able to go abroad, whether or not I'll be able to have all the classes in person. That probably won't be the case, for the better. I'd rather be cautious and follow those guidelines. And I'll still have the following semesters to be able to enjoy that. So yeah, feeling a bit mixed, as I'm sure some of you might be. It's unfortunate, especially anyone who graduated this past semester kind of felt it was, when you have projects on the go, it can be tough to do those online. I know my capstone degree online doing my capstone project online was really bizarre because I'm in mechanical engineering, which involves a lot of prototyping and manufacturing. So moving that online with all group members in different cities was a challenge in itself. So it'll be interesting to see how those projects and those supplementary hands-on aspects of learning will be able to continue. It's easy to watch a PowerPoint or do lecture notes online, but some of the really enriching labs and tutorials, it'll be interesting to see how those are continued. Thanks, Katrina. I appreciate it. Awesome. Well, we are at the 1 hour mark. That flew by. Thank you all for the ones who were able to come and watch and listen and ask questions. If you, like I mentioned, if you have any questions, please let me know. I'd be willing to help out. And thanks again to David and Kinga and anyone else who helps organize this AMA. It's such a great initiative. I can't wait for everyone who is to come on Sundays. And yeah, I just want to extend my gratitude, and I'm excited for anyone who's entering or in the network, in the Shilluk Leader Network already, because it's only growing and it's only becoming more and more inspiring. And I can't wait to see where all of you will be at the end of your degrees, and what's to come in the future. And I'm always so blessed to be a part of this community. So with that, I I will call it an evening. I'll call it the end to this. And as always, feel free to reach out. Thank you, everyone.